if you just focus on doing basics incredibly well, that alone will set you up for success. And I think probably the main thing for me is to do a bit of a reality check into what we're actually trying to achieve. So, we're not trying to put somebody on the moon. We're not trying to do brain surgery. We're trying to find customers that have a problem that our software solves. And it almost doesn't matter what the software is. It's actually, what is the problem it solves? What companies and organizations face that problem and currently haven't done anything about it, and then who are the individuals within that organization that we can go and talk to. So I think once you've got clarity on kind of the problem it solves, the kind of businesses or organizations that would need that problem solving, and then the individuals within the respective organizations, then that is what you need to do. You need to go and talk to those people and talk to and take that message and talk through how you can kind of make their life easier and hope that they see value in whatever you do. So I think, simplify it is a good thing. Mm-hmm. And then there's a quote that I read years ago when I was traveling, and I really liked it, and I pulled it up actually because I had it on my screensaver. So I'll read it verbatim. Okay. And it's: perfection consists not in doing extraordinary things, but in doing ordinary things extraordinarily well. And what I think that's really good for is it kind of takes on that simplification to the next level. So we don't need to do anything massively innovative in terms of our approach to sales. Get the basics right and to a really high standard, and you're going to set yourself apart, I think, just by doing that. Mm-hmm. I see a lot of organizations that go so scientific with their approach and try almost to reinvent the wheel, whereas actually get the basics right, set clear agendas, have a good succinct proposal and value proposition, use data to your advantage so you can kind of accurately model where you are in the sales cycle and help find those gaps. I think if you just focus on doing basics incredibly well, that alone will set you up for success.
That is really cool. So let's move on to your sales team. So once you figured out what your product solves, what issue it's solving, how do you translate this to your sales team and get them to sell a lot more effectively?
Yeah, so we've got to be really clear around what it is that we do, the value problem we solve, and again, who that is. So once we mapped out, I suppose, our target market, our addressable market, we need to come up with a go-to-market plan. So how are we going to get that message? Firstly, to the salespeople, so they really clearly understand what it is that the value we bring, and then go and kind of find the end customers. And I think for me, it starts off with a really good education program internally. So making sure that there's that kind of knowledge share across the team, probably captured at an onboarding process. So, this is what we do, this is who we work with, this is the value we bring, and this is the kind of our approach and methodology. And I think once you've kind of cemented that in at day one, really, of the organisation, you can just evolve that. And for me, it's around, getting people that see the actual value in what you do as a sales perspective, because I think that comes across in conversations. I think being really passionate about the problem that you're solving, and I do talk about that a lot, but I think it's, if you can really centre around that, you get a lot of passion and enthusiasm from your sales team that then extends into the client conversations. So I think it's around the kind of the general education and empowerment of information in kind of people's mindset to then go and put that into our customers and prospects kind of heads.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. It does link with what you've said before about finding what the product solves and then making sure that your reps can actually do that. So are there any primary and then like sub metrics that you would look for when you're hiring or even just onboarding your reps?
Yeah, so I suppose in terms of what I look for, the most important thing for me isn't industry experience or kind of relevant storytelling. What I look for is characteristics. So I'm not bothered necessarily about, have you come from a competitor, have you sold our product? What I'm more bothered about is kind of some key traits. So willingness to learn, drive, motivation, curiosity, kind of continuous improvement mindset. So first and foremost, I think if you've got those, then we can then look at the metrics that support that. And really, you know, it is relatively simple for us. So how many conversations are we having? How many demos are we having? What kind of attendees are we getting on the demos? What's our win rate of demo to proposal? And then, you know, basically just looking at a typical sales funnel and looking at activity-based metrics. But I think you can't do one, in my view, you can't do one size fits all. So I think the output probably needs to be consistent across kind of the team. So this is what we expect, but you might have, so when I was kind of focusing on the sales, I didn't have the massive kind of activity that some of the other team members did, but I have really good kind of closure rate. So I didn't need maybe 10 demos to 2 deals. I might need 4, but I'd spend a lot more time on the 4 than maybe I would somebody doing 10. And I think what you've got to do is make sure you've got kind of standard metrics around output, but then looking at the individual at a personal level and being like, right, are you a high volume kind of guy? If so, or girl, and if so, look, we can model based on you. Or are you more of a sniper that goes after the bigger accounts and does a lot of work and research once you engage in that and probably has a high win rate? So I think you can definitely do activity-based metrics, but that for me, they do need to be linked to kind of the way of working and the role that that person's in.
Okay. And I imagine when you as a sales rep yourself, you took more of the sniper approach.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, found it. I like to get under the bonnet of, you know, my customers' requirements a bit, and that takes time, but I think it also helps build a bit of trust as well.
That's really cool. So thinking back to your sales reps, how would you distinguish between an individual weakness as opposed to a team weakness?
Okay, well, it's a good question. So I think firstly, you've got to look at how's the team performing holistically. So if the team numbers are down, the team morale is down, then there's probably a wider problem than individual, if that makes sense. So I think if you've got a team that's performing well, but there's some individuals that are having challenges potentially, and you know, we all have dips, it's kind of how sales work, but I think what we're talking about here is more prolonged challenges and areas of development. And I think what you have to do is, for me, look at who's succeeding, what are they doing, and what are the people that maybe aren't finding that success doing differently. And even just as again, in its simplest format, if you copy the behaviours, the qualification process, the proposal templates of somebody that has year in year delivered, so showing that kind of consistent success, you're going to mirror it. You just are. So I think for me, it's look at identifying and diagnosing, is it an issue at a team level, i.e. is everyone struggling, or is it a handful of individuals? And if it's a handful of individuals, maybe map them against the top performers to see what gaps are missing.
So it is kind of like what you said before about not having to reinvent the wheel. Just look at what the A players are doing and do that.
Exactly that. Yeah, exactly that.
Okay. How do you make this process tangible and repeatable?
In terms of the kind of the way of working as an A player, so for new starters that they get used to that kind of, okay. So I think there's a few things you can do. So we found buddy systems can be quite effective. So new joiners would get kind of paired, and they almost shadow an A play for X period of time, and you kind of ramp that up and then ramp it back down as the kind of the new joiners stand on their own 2 feet. So I think that's been a really effective way of just doing that. I think they call it learning by osmosis, where basically if you spend enough time with somebody that's really good at their game, it rubs off on you and you kind of pick up the skills, traits, conversations. So I think that is an incredibly effective way of learning and setting out the stall in terms of the way of working. The other thing I think is often overlooked is a quality onboarding process. So it's so easy, well, in fact, it's so difficult to, when you're kind of a sales leader and you've got the kind of the pulls and pressures of the day-to-day, to get in a headspace where it's like, right, what does a new joiner actually need? So everything from on day one, there's the laptop, the phone, all set up ready. There's a clear agenda of what the first month looks like, some key objectives already laid out. And I think it's quite difficult to kind of make sure you're prioritising that. But when you're handling the data, and I think one thing that I found really effective is just taking myself away for a day before we do the next round of new joiners and setting that out. So what does a good onboarding process look like? So they need to understand the company. They need to understand our core values at both a company, an org level and a sales team level. They need to understand who their buddy's going to be and what the way of working the review cadence is. And I think you just kind of set the stall out really early on in that journey with you, that this is how we do things, and then make sure that there's touch points throughout the whole career where they get the ability to learn from other individuals across the organisation.
Okay.
And then just do more of it.
Just do more of it. So how often would you say you do this training and like reminding everyone of the core values?
So if I'm being honest, probably not as much as I would like. It's definitely something that I'm wanting to do more of, and we are actively doing more of. So without fail, when they join, so you get an induction that covers kind of the way of working, core values, and then in a QBR we would kind of revisit how we're doing, how we're tracking against our wider goals, our company goals, and then are we still kind of working towards our kind of value, our vision and values. And so at the moment, I would say kind of when you're joining quarterly, but I think what I'm trying to do is build that more into our end of month kickoff. So, reviewing, are we still in those kind of, are we delivering the vision for the business? Are we still behaving in the way that we expect? Are we still honouring kind of the buddy system? So, are the meetings happening? Is there a clear agenda? Are people getting value from it? So I think for me, as regular as possible is a good thing, and I think monthly feels right for any organisation to try and work towards.
Okay. Well, here's a question for you, right? So you have this buddy system and you're obviously tracking. How do you use any data to track? How do you know if something's a success and your reps have been onboarded successfully?
Yeah. So there's definitely data you can use. So we look at output of revenue over historical time is kind of obviously the key one. I think something I'm really interested in is closure rate. So kind of qualified up to actual new customer, and is that increasing? Are we seeing an increase in closure rate? I think that's really an effective one to monitor. And then from a less so from kind of a number of calls, number of emails, I'm not so interested in that at this stage. It's more around the quality of the output once we find somebody that we can have those conversations with. And I think those are the two key metrics really for me.
Okay, perfect. And last question for you, Nick. If you was in a room full of revenue leaders, what's that one burning question that you'd want an answer to?
I'd probably go around the room and I'd ask them all, what is the one burning bit of advice that you've learned over your journey that you think would set you up for success? And I think if you got that view of, say, 20 people in the room, then you're going to have 20 really good nuggets of information and probably a collective of, 200, 300 years experience. So that would probably be what I would do. I'd push it back on them.
You're such a salesperson. I love that. And that was a really good question to ask. What would you say your answer is?
I think not hiring on experience is key. I think if you want a longer term view, which to build a really good company, you can't just think the here and now. You've got to think medium long term. I think hire on fit team fit, hunger,
Mm.
drive to better themselves, because experience and product knowledge is so easy to implement and train, but kind of characteristics take time, and it's often you can't always kind of change people's mindset in terms of that growth mindset. So I think for me, hire on individual, worry about skills later on, they can be taught.
So there's some things that can be taught and there's some things that can't really be taught, like drive and energy and
Correct.
the good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really easy as a sales leader to think, oh, this guy or girl's from my biggest competitor, they must be really good because they know the market, they know the industry, they know the product. But, you know, I could teach anyone about our product platform and solution we deliver in an afternoon. But what I can't do is give somebody drive, that needs and real deep desire to continue to develop and grow as an individual. And I think you've just got to look beyond the kind of experience. For me, that would be my number one tip.
Okay. What do you think a common trait is in your reps?
I think the real deep desire to just want to do better every single day. So that's better for our customers, better for us as individuals in terms of better preparation, better win rates. Nobody gets comfortable, and we don't have an environment where there's kind of big egos. Like, there's no egos. It's just good kind of authentic people that want to do better at their job every single day and deliver that real value for our customers. And I think that's probably the key trait